36th episode of the American Reveille Podcast, I asked the question, we all know Joe Biden's a crook, but is he a pedophile? Sources say, possibly. I talk about the infamous laptop and how an intoxicated Hunter Biden left it at a computer repair shop in Delaware, but not before signing the receipt. I bring up the F.B.I. connection and everything we know about Ukraine, China, and Russia, demonstrating how it implicates Joe Biden and pretty much his entire family. Worst of all, I reveal why Donald Trump specifically calls it the laptop from hell. Could the Bidens be hiding a dark secret? Find out next in episode 36, Hunter's Red October. Are the Bidens about to be exposed as pedophiles? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 36th episode of the American Reveille Podcast on this Monday, the 19th of October, on what will one day be considered one of the most historically significant months in American history. Folks, I'm James Lane, and we are knee-deep in Hunter's Red October. Similar to the hunt for Red October, mainly because no one knows where the hell Hunter actually is, and because there just so happens to be Russians involved. So, apparently, after being questioned about Hunter's email scandal, Joe blew off the reporter and called a lid on his public appearances until this Thursday's debate, which means he's pretty much taking 3 days off, which must be nice. I have to go to work, actually, after I put this podcast out, but the mainstream media reporters seem to chuckle at the notion that Hunter was even being brought up, and obviously Trump derangement syndrome's like running wild again in 2020, just like it was in 2016. So here we are, and the left is fooling itself again and again, setting itself up for failure and setting us up for some fantastically hilarious memes this November. Look, folks, on a serious note, most of us that truly follow politics and have a vested interest in this country's future know Joe Biden's a slimy crook. We know his family are slimy crooks. They're a slimy crook family. We know his son is a slimy crook imbecile. And what we didn't know is that they might be pedophiles. So that's the screwed up part. So with this 47-year black book of secrets, who knows what the hell Joe Biden and company are into? We know a few things for certain about Joe. 1, we know his policies have never helped anyone. 2, we know he's a pathological liar. And 3, he happens to be extra touchy and sniffy with young people. And I think we can all agree on that one for sure. Do you guys even know what he's supported over the years? Let's look at a few things before we move on to Joe's kiddo. Case in point. What are a few things Joe Biden voted for over the years? Well, he voted for the big anti-gay marriage bill back in 1996 called the Defense of Marriage Act. He voted to go to war with Iraq. He voted for and pushed the 1994 crime bill that locked up a disproportionate amount of black Americans for crack cocaine. What a coincidence. He stands with big banks and he stands with Wall Street. This is a man who idolized Strom Thurmond, a man who ran for president on the platform of bringing back segregation. No wonder Black Lives Matter and Antifa love Joe Biden. He's flip-flopped on so many issues over the years just to pander to voters that it doesn't take a rocket scientist, folks. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to recognize the price tag hanging off of Joe Biden's career. How can you guys trust this man? You have to ask yourself that. How can you trust a pathological liar? Joe Biden's lied about everything from how he met his wife to his college grades and accomplishments. This man's lived in a bubble for 47 years and somehow expects us to believe that we should just hand over the keys to the car. The extent of his lies are so deep and far-reaching, yet the Democrat Party and mainstream media cover it up for him every time. Why? Listen to this, guys. Listen to this from moderndiplomacy.eu. Quote, Joe Biden was one of the U.S. Senate's leading segregationalists, and he was condemned by the NAACP for it in 1977 hearings before the Senate Judiciary Committee. but he is claimed instead to have participated in anti-segregation sit-ins, which were led by black ministers, all of whom were conveniently deceased at the time when he made those assertions, and so they could not be asked whether he had participated. He was making those assertions while running against Bernie Sanders, whom the Chicago Tribune showed in their photo during the 1960s being arrested as a college student for his peacefully demonstrating against Chicago's segregationalist policy at the time. Sanders, in his presidential campaign, didn't brag about it. Only Biden bragged about his anti-segregationalist activity, though it was fictitious, and so Biden swamped Sanders in the South Carolina primary on February 29th, the turning point in the 2020 Democratic presidential primaries, where most of the voters were blacks who had been deceived by Biden's claims and who really didn't know that Biden had actually been a leading northern segregationalist. Biden even backed an anti-integration bill by North Carolina Republican segregationalist Senator Jesse Helms to prohibit the federal government from requiring school districts to be or become desegregated in order to qualify to receive federal funds and to allow instead separate but equal education of black and white children. Yeah. That's just another one of the dozens and dozens and dare I say hundreds of lies that Joe Biden's told. He has absolutely zero credibility. And if that's not enough for you, then we should just take a look at the latest fact checks from PolitiFact.com. These lies shouldn't be a surprise to any of you. Joe Biden, October 10th, 2022, reporters. Joe Biden said Senate Republicans' move to confirm Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court in election year is not constitutional. That's false. Joe Biden then, September 9th. Well, I guess that's before October 10th, but September 9th, 2020, at a speech in Michigan, Joe said military COVID infected 118,984, military COVID deaths 6,114. That's false. At a speech in Delaware on September 2nd, 2020, Joe said that he was the first person to call for the invocation of the Defense Production Act. Again, false. See, Joe is a walking, talking gaffe machine. He's obviously suffered from bouts of dementia. If he wasn't being protected, like The Godfather, by big tech and the mainstream media, he would have completely dropped out of the election by now. Finally, besides demonstrating a history of being a racist, Mr. quote, "you ain't black unless you vote for me," ventures out into the racial jungle, as he likes to call them, and inappropriately sniffs and touches young people. We've all seen the dozens and dozens of videos and pictures of this, and it's absolutely disturbing, yet nothing official ever seems to come from it. I think in this circumstance, it's best to talk about what we do know, though. So thank you, Business Insider, by the way, for providing the following information. So let's go down this list. Tara Reid alleged in April 2019 that Biden touched her in ways that made her feel uncomfortable while she worked in his Senate office in 1993. In March 2020, Reid alleged that Biden sexually assaulted her back in 93. So after that, you have Lucy Flores alleged in March 2019 that Biden grasped her shoulders from behind and kissed the back of her head without her consent during a campaign event in 2014. That's pretty gross. Ali Cole, a former Democratic staffer, told the Washington Post in April 2019 that when she met Biden in 2008, he complimented her smile, squeezed her shoulders, and held her for a beat too long. And folks, I think if I did that to somebody, my wife would kick me in the balls. But after this, anyway, Amy Stokes Lapos, her name's Amy Stokes Lapos, alleges Biden pulled her face close to him during a 2009 political fundraiser. Caitlin Caruso said after she shared her story of sexual assault at a University of Nevada event in 2016, Biden hugged her just too long, just a little bit too long, and then put his hand on her thigh. DJ Hill alleges Biden rested his hand on her shoulder and moved it down her back at a 2012 fundraising event in Minneapolis. Hill said the encounter made her feel, quote, very uncomfortable. Vale Conert-Yount, a former White House intern, said when she met Biden in 2013, he put his hand on the back of my head and pressed his forehead to my forehead. Conert-Yount also said Biden called her a pretty girl. In June 2019, Biden told the brothers of a 13-year-old girl to, quote, keep the guys away from her at a campaign event. This is some pretty disgusting stuff, folks. And I'm sorry to have to go through it with you, but everybody has been talking about this laptop, and I felt that it was important to give some context as to who we were dealing with in the case of Joe Biden before we really got into it. So in a family of liars and con artists, the apple doesn't always fall too far from the tree, yet we'll get to Hunter Biden. But first, we are here about the laptop, aren't we? I mean, we have to talk about it a little bit, and I'm actually going to read my own article for the next little bit of this segment because I think it perfectly sums it up. And it's on AmericanReveille.com if you want to look it up, and it's by me, obviously, James Lane. But on a strange day in Delaware back in April 2019, Hunter Biden stumbled into a local computer repair shop. Laptop in hand, he explained that it had been damaged by water and needed to be repaired. After some time, though, the repair shop owner realized just whose laptop he had, and after Hunter never returned to claim the property, he decided to take a look inside. By Delaware law, this is legal, though, after a certain amount of time, but what he found was disturbing. Worried for his safety and the safety of others, the repair shop owner immediately handed over the hard drive to the F.B.I., but not before making a few additional copies. Keep in mind the F.B.I. received this information in late 2019, which raises questions of collusion between F.B.I. Director Christopher Wray and the Biden camp. With the F.B.I. not taking this information seriously, the repair shop owner gave his copy to Rudy Giuliani and his lawyer, Robert Costello, who was a former federal prosecutor. And at the time, the left assumed Giuliani's hiring of these lawyers back in 2019 had to do with the Donald Trump impeachment scandal, yet the timing lines up with the acquisition of this damning information. Bluntly, I'm going to put it, the laptop that Hunter forgot contained thousands of photographs, thousands of emails, and possibly hundreds of videos implicating the Bidens in international criminal behavior. Like I said earlier in this episode, this is one of the biggest scandals during one of the most serious times in American history. Unfortunately for Joe, his son's just pretty much a drug addict. And this is a serious subject. First, I want to say that drug addiction's no joke. I'm actually the son of a drug addict, and having grown up low income, I've got more than just a little bit of experience with the type of person we're dealing with. Hunter Biden's a crackhead, plain and simple. Crackheads are desperate. Crackheads are unpredictable. Crackheads are compromised. Smoking rock is a quick yet insanely addicting and intense high. It puts those who are slaves to it in a very precarious position. Hunter Biden's one of those slaves. I don't care how many times you go to rehab, any addict will tell you that once you're an addict, you're always an addict of some sort. Sadly, instead of trying to help his family, Joe exploits his family, especially Hunter, in what seems to be a deeply rooted criminal enterprise. And we're going to get to that in a second, but here's the thing. The left keeps reporting that we're all victims of Russian disinformation, which is how they're trying to explain the scandal away, but it's not working. The scandal just keeps growing and growing larger. And folks, this isn't Russian interference or disinformation. This is an idiot, druggy kid, well, adult kid, accidentally screwing the family. And this is very common. How many of you have relatives with drug problems? I know I do. And we all know that many issues they cause, we can try to help them, but they really either recover or we just can't help them anymore. And Joe obviously facilitated and encouraged his son's behavior. And ladies and gentlemen, if you know drug addicts, then you already know what happened. Hunter was messed up and fried his laptop, and in a drugged up stupor, he probably took it to the repair shop in Delaware and signed some paperwork. And soon after, he may have entered rehab and simply never retrieved his property. Whoopsie daisy. It's that simple. Well, simple for us, but for the Bidens, Hunter unintentionally exposed the entire Biden crime syndicate. This information's been in the FBI's hands since the end of 2019, so why is it that nothing was ever done about it? Why is the FBI covering for Joe Biden? Hunter really messed up, and the entire Biden family must be absolutely panicking. There are ties to Russia, ties to the Ukraine, ties to communist China. We've all heard of Hunter working for Burisma with no experience, or flying to China with his dad on Air Force Two. We know Joe Biden's brother James develops communities in Iraq with no experience either. Hell, Biden's niece is even a career thief, serving probation currently for shoplifting. Hunter, a guy kicked out of the Navy for drug use, a guy I wouldn't hire to wash my crappy Impala, somehow involves himself in international business dealings and legally makes millions? I'm not buying it, and you shouldn't either. We'll start with the FBI Biden connection as soon as we return from break. So, folks, with just 15 days left before the election, we're just 5 days away from what many believe to be the big October surprise that solidifies the demise of Biden's campaign. It's important to stay vigilant during this time, and ensuring that you have a plan to vote is very important. This is the most important election of our lives, and we can't allow the radical leftists to take over our country and crush our God-given rights. If you aren't encouraging your friends and family members to vote red this November, then you are wrong. If you aren't openly speaking up against the left, then you are encouraging them. Please understand that you, as an individual, are important and essential to this republic, and we, as a team, are a powerful force to be reckoned with. So don't make any excuses. Vote as soon as you can. Folks, if you're enjoying this episode, please take a moment to share us, follow us, talk about us, spread the word for us. I really need your help to get past all the leftist censorship. I can no longer pay for advertisements. I can't get distributed. We've had most of our distribution cut on our platform, so I need you to desperately just spread the word for me. I really do appreciate your support, and when we get back from break, I'm going to cover the FBI connection, overseas details, and how this implicates Joe Biden. And once we cover that, we're going to expose the reason why Trump himself called Hunter Biden's computer the laptop from hell. We'll be right back.
Reveille Podcast with James Lane would like to take a moment to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to tune into the show. It's because of great fans like you that we strive to deliver the best quality content one can create as fast as one can fling the pen. With that being said, a good little boy never misses his opportunity to sell himself, and though James would never ask you for your money, he would like to let you know that if you absolutely love this podcast, the writing, the art, its production, anything, please do us the personal favor of liking, sharing, tweeting, texting, and talking about this podcast. James Lane is a father, a husband, a U.S. Navy veteran, and is personally committed to the success of the American Reveille Podcast. Please email James Lane directly at podcast@AmericanReveille.com, or please visit our website at www.AmericanReveille.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the second half of the American Reveille Podcast. This is episode 36, Hunter's Red October. I am James Lane, and this is Monday, October 19th, 2020, and the clock is running out for the Bidens and the swamp. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you to everyone who shared this podcast during the break. I really, really appreciate it. So, hey, did you know that a bunch of people working for Biden have connections to big tech and vice versa? Biden's transition team includes Jessica Hertz, a prominent Facebook executive. Carlos Monje, I think that's how you say it, I really don't care, is also on Biden's team, though his former job was that of Twitter's Director of Public Policy. 8 other members of Biden's advisory team worked for Facebook, Apple, Google, and Amazon, but, nothing to see here, right? Just look the other way, right? It starts to make you understand how and why the censorship of the New York Post happened, how the breaking news on this subject has been largely censored and silenced, along with everyone else involved, regardless of affiliation. The Bidens are in cahoots and deeply embedded with the mainstream media, big tech, and well-established government entities like the FBI. The skinny of it is that the FBI has been sitting on this information since last year. Like we said earlier, the FBI did nothing about this data and have a ton of explaining to do. The fact that FBI Director Wray still has a job is actually quite mind-boggling for the occasion's gravity. Look, folks, this stuff's a mess. When they say the swamp runs deep, they obviously mean it. I feel like for every crony Trump fires, 2 more pop up. It's like throwing water on a freaking gremlin. We all want arrests. We all want to see these corrupt swamp rats carted off to Gitmo. But I think FBI Director Wray symbolizes some of the roadblocks to the effective, long-lasting, positive change we really want in this country. We don't want to move away from our way of life like the left wants to. We want to refine it. We want to solidify it. We want to reignite the American spirit in all of us. These roadblocks, along with the ungodly amount of evidence most likely necessary they make this process very difficult. I also think there's a third aspect we don't really take into consideration. We say, hey, you have the damn evidence, just arrest people. But there's a historical perspective that must be examined. And I think the Durhams and Bill Barrs of this world have to make decisions that hold historical weight. Whatever they determine in some of these cases will most likely shape American life for the next possible century. So it must be an absolutely spine-crushing burden. Just imagine being one of these guys. Imagine trying to sleep at night knowing what they know. It must be tremendously difficult to weigh without absolute mountains of damning evidence. I'm not necessarily sticking up for them. Look, I'm impatient just like you, but I'm telling you that I understand. I don't have to agree with them to understand, and neither do you. Here's the thing that makes this different. Bill Barr's actively investigating Antifa and other groups, or he has people doing it. John Durham is actively investigating the Russian collusion scandal. That's one of Bill Barr's people. And FBI Director Chris Wray ate shawarma and screwed off for the last year, while this evidence figuratively sat on his desk. So while the radical leftist Democrats tried to remove the sitting president of the United States from office on bogus Russian collusion charges, the evidence that actually linked the left to real Russian collusion charges were filed away in a cabinet labeled Dilligaff. And for those who don't know what Dilligaff stands for, Dilligaff is a fun and hip way to say, does it look like I give an F, without anyone over 35 figuring it out. So with that being said, what do the Hunter Biden emails really reveal about the Ukraine, about Russia, and about China anyway? Well, we know James Biden, a man with no experience in development, somehow magically became part of a $1.5 billion housing project in Iraq. That's always been questionable. James Biden seems to have a lot in common with Hunter, as he's been a lobbyist with decades of sketchy employment history, somehow running into good luck around every corner with little to no experience. James and Hunter would team up regularly on different endeavors spanning law, business, and politics. And it's just weird that this idiot gets a $1.5 billion housing deal in Iraq while Joe and Obama were occupying Iraq. Then you have Hunter Biden receiving $3.5 million in a bank transfer from Katerina Baturina, the rich wife, and I know that sounds fake, but it's an actual real name. Katerina Baturina, the rich wife of the dead mayor of Moscow. Can someone tell me why one of Putin's comrades would be sending money to the Bidens? Can someone tell me how that alone isn't Russian collusion? And regarding the Ukraine, we know that Joe Biden was in charge of dealings between the U.S. and the Ukraine during his term as VP. We know that he and Obama screwed the Ukrainians on many occasions. We know around this time, Hunter Biden, again, while his father is the guy running the show between the U.S. and Ukraine, Hunter Biden is appointed to the board of Burisma for somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000 a month. He's appointed to the board of directors to basically funnel money to the Biden family. We know this happened because the laptop revealed a series of 8 text messages linking Hunter Biden's Burisma employment to a meeting set up between Joe and Burisma executives. We usually hear about Joe Biden's threatening to withhold $1 billion worth of aid to the Ukraine if a certain prosecutor wasn't fired. And this is the point in the story where that actually fits in. The prosecutor, and I believe his name was Shokin, he was investigating criminal activity within Burisma involving Hunter and others. And data on the laptop actually links the timelines together and proves that Joe Biden was bragging about bailing out his son's criminal enterprise. This is some of the most corrupt and vile stuff you could come across in politics, folks. And it only gets worse, though, ladies and gentlemen. It seems that the Bidens have been doing business with the Chinese Communist Party since at least 2014, and I'm sure we can guess well before that. And after Hunter and Joe flew to China during the Obama era on government business, Hunter mysteriously became a business partner upon returning to the U.S. with a $1 billion loan from China. It was Hunter Biden, Devin Archer, and that famous Boston gangster Whitey Bulger's nephew. Here's some Chinese business deals found on the hard drive. The CEFC, a Chi-Com energy company, and I got a lot of this information from Rudy Giuliani, but CEFC, a Chi-Com energy company, striking a business deal with Hunter Biden, James Biden, their wives, and an open end for other family members to join. There are several known communists also linked in these documents. The deal equates to $10 million a year for 3 years in a row, with eventual cuts being paid out to certain group members. This is where we hear about the reference to the, quote, big guy, and who that could possibly refer to. There's so much more than what I'm talking about, guys, and more will be revealed over the next 2 weeks publicly, but we need to cover everything, so it's important we look at some of the other things that actually implicate big guy Joe Biden. So earlier in the podcast, we talked about Joe Biden's personal problems, one of them being that he's a pathological liar. And while the Democrats accused the president of Russian collusion, which was pretty much a hoax made up by Hillary Clinton to smear Trump, now proved by certain notes that were revealed, the Biden crime syndicate was knee-deep in all kinds of collusion. 3 ways to Sunday. Joe's consistently stated again and again that he knows nothing of his family's business dealings, from Hunter to James to everyone in between. Joe Biden always claims he knows nothing, but here's what the emails, the text, and the data show in regard to implicating Joe Biden. Yes, Joe Biden's linked to James Biden's deals in Iraq. Yes, Joe Biden is linked to Hunter Biden and his Russian, his Ukraine business dealings. And finally, yes, Joe Biden is directly linked to Chinese communists. Biden has denied all of these things. And yet, here's the proof staring us all right in the face. The reason why Joe Biden's tax returns are clean is that the money and payouts are funneled through the family members. Hunter gets paid. James gets paid. Spouses get paid, but Joe and Jill, they don't get any money on the books. No, they get cash back from the family members. This is why Joe's taxes are clean. And this is absolutely why we must demand that the Biden family members' taxes are released. Everything we've talked about so far, ladies and gentlemen, everything we've talked about is absolutely more than enough to disqualify Joe Biden from continuing his run for the presidency. But what if I told you we weren't done yet? What if I told you that Donald Trump called Hunter Biden's laptop the laptop from hell for a reason? Initial reports are disturbing. According to multiple sources, the Chinese Communist Party has all the information that's on this laptop, including thousands of photos and documents. The documents on the laptop and everything it implicates has been source checked. It's been verified. All reports and agencies express that the information is most likely legitimate. And more disturbingly, the Biden campaign has not denied the legitimacy of the allegations. Hunter Biden signed the receipt when he dropped the laptop off at the repair shop, folks. I want you to remember that as I continue the episode. Sources are starting to report that Hunter Biden's laptop from hell contains terrifying pictures and videos of Hunter participating in lewd and disgusting abusive sexual acts with underage girls. I'm hearing that Hunter has pictures and videos of himself getting doped up and doing things that you couldn't even imagine seeing in a movie. Folks, do you understand what this could mean? We may find out that Hunter Biden is a sick, twisted pedophile in the coming days, and Joe Biden knows all about it. This means that the Democrat presidential nominee runs an international crime racket where his family sells their souls to foreign nations for a profit. At the same time, he's sniffing people and forgetting his lines. His son diddles children in other countries while smoking crack. How the hell is this guy running for president? Folks, this is so much bigger than what it looks like. You have big tech intertwined with the leftist revolution, this ideological takeover stoking the flames of possible civil war and absolutely protecting a possible pedophile who's running for president. You have the mainstream media covering for Joe, Hunter, and James while pretending like none of this ever happened and brainwashing 40% of the country and the entire time. Again, kids are being abused. This is absolutely outrageous. We're living in a world where the left and the communists have brainwashed our people, and it's time to wake the hell up. Folks, the Democrats, the radical left, they've exposed themselves as infiltrated, bought off, as revolutionary pedophiles. Make no mistake, the next few weeks are absolutely critical, and we're going to see some of the most unexpected and historical things unfold. So grab some popcorn and red vines because things are about to speed the hell up. Hunter Biden screwed. I don't know if you know this, and you probably don't, but Hunter's business partner's already been arrested. The reason why we don't hear about any of this and we don't hear about him is because he's laying low and the media's covering for him. They're absolutely coming for him. I believe when Biden's implicated, he's going to all of a sudden have dementia. This is a man who advocated for the rights of 8-year-olds. Listen to this. He advocated for the rights of 8-year-olds, this is Joe Biden, to surgically transition to the opposite sex at a live town hall last week. How can he possibly be in his right mind? And if you don't believe me, Google it, because it's there. This sicko should be locked up, not running for president, locked up. That's why it's so important we vote for Trump as soon as we can. If you're in a state with early voting, get it done. And if you're going to the polls on November 3rd, again, have a plan. Bring your friends. The more, the merrier. We have the power to save this country, but we have to wake up. We have to fight. We have to save our children and drain the swamp once and for all. So, folks, thank you so much for listening to the 36th episode of the American Reveille Podcast. I know it's pretty disturbing stuff to think about and talk about, but in order to get rid of these people, we must be brave. We must face the truth. We must face their evil. Thank you, guys. Thank you for standing shoulder to shoulder with me in our fight to preserve our God-given rights and freedoms. The left wants to take these freedoms away, but don't let them. Don't be silent. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please don't forget to give me a 5-star rating and subscribe to this show. Any feedback, any questions, any comments, please join me on social media on Parler at The James Lane or all other social media platforms at American Reveille. If you'd like to help out in any way, you can also reach out directly to me at jameslane@AmericanReveille.com. And please visit my website as basically the central hub for everything American Reveille has to offer. That's www.americanreveille.com. And folks, I really believe we're going to be okay. Things may seem shaky, they may seem uncertain, but I believe that our Constitution is stronger than this socialist doctrine, and I know that our people's relationship with freedom is unique to the world. I have faith that we will overcome this together, and on the other side, we will triumph and prosper. Until next week, ladies and gentlemen, steady.